a moral duty, and a strategic imperative. So we will continue to stand up for Israel's bedrock right to defend itself. And we will also continue to urge the protection of civilians during conflict and to increase the flow of humanitarian aid into Gaza. That's important as Israel fights to dismantle the Hamas terrorist infrastructure in Gaza. And it will also be crucial for our work with our allies and partners after the fighting stops. Now, we're working to ensure that this conflict does not escalate beyond Gaza. But as we are driving to stabilize the region, Iran is raising tensions by continuing to support terrorist groups and militias. Attacks by these Iranian proxies threaten the region's citizens and risk a broader conflict. Of course, the United States does not seek war, and we urgently call on Iran to take steps to de-escalate. Now, in my meetings today, I also discussed the need to take urgent action to stabilize the West Bank. Attacks by extremist settlers against the Palestinians in the West Bank must stop. And those committing the violence must be held accountable. Now, we know that the past 72 days have been some of the most painful days in Israel's history. But it would compound this tragedy if all that was waiting for the Israeli people and your Palestinian neighbors at the end of this awful war was more insecurity, fury, and despair. As I've said, Israelis and Palestinians have both paid too bitter a price to just go back to October 6th. So I discussed pathways today toward a future for Gaza after Hamas, based upon the clear principles laid down last month by my friend, Secretary Blinken. Israelis and Palestinians both deserve a horizon of hope. So the United States continues to believe, as we have under administrations of both parties, that it is in the interest of both Israelis and Palestinians to move forward toward two states, living side by side in mutual security. Now, we know how hard that is, especially after October 7th. But ongoing instability and insecurity only play into the hands of Hamas. So we must think together about what lies beyond this terrible season of terror and war. And as we do, the United States will remain deeply committed to the security and self-defense of the State of Israel. As John F. Kennedy said in 1960, America's friendship with Israel is a national commitment. That was true then, and it's even truer now. The United States will remain Israel's closest friend in the world. As I've said repeatedly, our support for Israel's security remains unshakable, and it always will. Thank you very much, and we'll be happy to take your questions.
All right, we'll start now with Karen Bezalel.
Thank you. Secretary Austin, welcome to Israel. It's not a secret that there is a gap between Israel and the US, so have you set any sort of either timetable or deadline to the current phase of Israel ground war in Gaza? And have you heard any firm assessment from the IDF where the current phase stands? And if I may, with regard to the north, Israel says, and Minister Gallant has just repeated, that it will attack Lebanon if there won't be an acceptable solution that will include Hezbollah withdrawal north to the Litani River. Jake Sullivan was here last week, and he was quite confident that such a solution can be achieved. What is the U.S. position if Israel attack, and will you order the U.S. Army to strike and even destroy Hezbollah and Iranian target if required? And Minister Gallant, it took the IDF 70 days to reach the tunnel that was revealed yesterday. How long do you think it takes to totally dismantle the threat of the tunnel in Gaza? And if I may ask you, Secretary Austin was speaking about the day after. The American keeps asking Israel how it sees the day after. So what do you tell them? Who will rule Gaza? And will the IDF be in Gaza throughout the entire next year? Thank you very much.
Which one of those 12 questions do you want me to ask?
I have more.
Regarding the timeline, this is Israel's operation. And I'm not here to dictate timelines or terms. Our support to Israel's right to defend itself is ironclad, as you've heard me say a number of times, and that's not going to change. It's critical, as I said earlier, that Hamas not be able to threaten Israel from Gaza or even threaten Gaza anymore. You know, that's an interest that we all share. It's a common interest with all of us. And so today we had great discussions about the status of the campaign, about goals and objectives, and about how to reduce harm to civilians in the battle space, and the need to ensure a sustained flow of humanitarian assistance into Gaza. You know, we can offer some insight based upon our own experience in fighting terrorist groups, and certainly that enabled us to have great discussions. And we also have some great thoughts about how to transition from high-intensity operations to lower intensity and more surgical operations. So we had great discussions on all of those issues. On Lebanon, we've been clear that we don't want to see this conflict widen into a larger war or a regional war, and we call upon Hezbollah to make sure that they don't do things that would provoke a wider conflict.
Yes, as to the first question, let me be more precise. It took us 70 days before we exposed this tunnel to the public. It was discovered longer period before that, after a month or so. But we had a lot of operations to be done inside the tunnel before we expose it. The war will take time, and I can assure only one issue, that eventually we will reach our goals. First of all, to destroy Hamas. Second, to rescue the hostages. Both of them are very important equally. This is a war of national determination and national resilience, and we will prevail because we are fighting for the right values and for our survival in this region. As to the second question, we understand how important is the cooperation, the international support to establish something different in Gaza. This is the reason we conduct this talks today together with Secretary Austin and General Brown and Mr. Satterfield and others regarding the issues that we have to conduct in Gaza. We know that Hamas will not control Gaza. We know that we will have the freedom to eliminate any kind of threat in the future, and there will be no serious military threats against Israel from Gaza. Second, Israel will not control Gaza in any civilian way. We will conduct any needed operational and military effort in order to secure our future, and we are building the routes for non-hostile partners in the other side.
Thank you, Tara Kopp. We can also please stick to one question each, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Minister Gallant, back to Lebanon. Are you currently planning for a ground operation in the north to, as you said, fully secure that area from Hezbollah? Secretary Austin, if that ground operation is launched, just to repeat my colleague's question, what role would U.S. forces have in such case? And then is it too dangerous right now, Minister Gallant, to open a second front in the north when you have troops committed in the south in Gaza? And my final one for Secretary Austin, another commercial vessel today was attacked in the Red Sea, and U.S. warships continue to intercept ballistic missiles and drones that are fired from Houthi-controlled Yemen. Why hasn't the U.S. struck back or conducted a counterstrike like it has against similar Iranian-backed militants in Iraq and Syria?
I would like to reiterate what I said. I said that diplomacy is the preferred way. We are not looking for wars, but we have 70,000 Israeli refugees, and Hezbollah is shooting us every day since October 8th, a day after Hamas launched the war against Israel. Therefore, in one hand, we are patient, and we are looking for a diplomacy solution that will make sure that Hezbollah is not threatened Israeli civilians on the northern communities directly. On the other hand, we are preparing ourselves to any situation that is needed, and if something like that happens, we will know what to do and we will prevail. We are not looking for anything similar to that, and we hope that Hezbollah will understand it. It's time to stop.
Thanks, Sarah. Regarding the Houthis, these attacks are reckless, dangerous, and they violate international law. And so we're taking action to build an international coalition to address this threat. And I would remind you that this is not just a U.S. issue. This is an international problem, and it deserves an international response. And that's why I'm convening a meeting tomorrow, a ministerial meeting with fellow ministers in the region and beyond, to address this threat. That'll be a virtual meeting, and I look forward to that discussion. And more important, I look forward to working together with members of that group to address the threat in a meaningful way in the future. And we'll have more details on this soon, but we're going to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to ensure freedom of navigation in the area. The straits are pretty important, as you know. A large amount of commerce flows through there. International commerce flows through there on a daily basis.
Yonah Bob.
Yonah Bob from the Jerusalem Post. Good to see you again, Mr. Secretary. There's been a lot of discussion about getting Israel's intent to reduce civilian casualties to match up with the results. General Petraeus famously said that sometimes the U.S. needs to take hits on force protection to win over hearts and minds. Legitimacy, you're probably familiar that just recently that 10 Israeli soldiers died in one ambush, and a lot of people in Israel were saying if the Israeli Defense Forces had just bombed the area, they wouldn't have died. Is this the kind of thing, war doesn't have perfect solutions, that sometimes the United States may think that Israel may need to take more hits to force protection instead of being as aggressive with its air force and artillery? Minister Gallant, good to see you. The United States, in its most respectful way possible, is trying to push Israel on certain timelines, on certain things about the day after. Is it maybe time that yourself and the government need to tell Israel that even though we've had tremendous successes in the field, we may not actually control all of Gaza at the end of January, we may not get all of the hostages back at the end of January, some of these things may continue in the 3 to 9 months afterwards, what they call Shlav Gimel, the third stage?
So for the first part of the question, in terms of the nature of the strikes and the amount of collateral damage, I think, let me begin by saying the protection of our troops is important to all of us. Minister Gallant, me, all of us. And that is foremost. But what we see happening is a combination of two things. The first thing is the complexity of this battle space. Three-dimensional battle space, very closed spaces, dense population of people, and so that makes it very, very difficult to conduct any military operation. Above and beyond that, we see that Hamas routinely uses civilians as shields. Beyond that, they place their headquarters and their logistical sites near protected sites, hospitals, mosques, churches, you name it. And so that adds to the complexity. And as you heard Jake Sullivan say, it provides an additional burden for the forces that are prosecuting this fight. It requires a very professional force, and that force has to learn each step of the way. And we've seen that. And Minister Gallant and I had a great conversation today about some of the things that they've learned and some of the techniques that they're changing and as they conduct operations in the South. So all of us learn, and again, they were a very professional force going into this, but this is an incredible complex battle space, and taking lessons learned from the North, they've applied some of those lessons in the South, and again, I'm sure that'll continue to happen.
Well, first of all, the discussion